The crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across the mahogany table as I adjusted my tie, watching Rebecca glide through our dining room like she owned not just the house, but everyone in it. She did, in a way. My wife had that effect on people, the kind of magnetic charm that made venture capitalists hand over millions and made our friends hang on her every word. Tonight's dinner party was her stage, and she was performing brilliantly. "Daniel, darling, could you pour the Bordeaux?" Her voice dripped honey, but I caught the edge beneath it. We'd been married 5 years, and I'd learned to read her moods like a sailor reads storm clouds. Our guests, 3 couples from our social circle, were already deep into their second bottles. James and Patricia Westwood, old money and older opinions. Christopher and Nina Alvarez, tech entrepreneurs who'd sold their startup for 8 figures. And Trevor and Amanda Sinclair, the couple who seemed to collect gossip like rare wines. I moved around the table, filling glasses, playing my role as the supportive husband. Rebecca had already steered the conversation toward her recent promotion to senior partner at her law firm, casually dropping details about the corner office and the landmark case she'd just won. "You must be so proud, Daniel," Patricia said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "It must be quite something, being married to such an accomplished woman." Before I could respond, Rebecca laughed, that particular laugh that set my teeth on edge. "Oh, Daniel handles it beautifully. He's very adaptable." The word hung in the air like smoke. Nina shifted uncomfortably, and I saw Trevor lean forward slightly, sensing blood in the water. "Speaking of adaptability," Rebecca continued, her wine glass poised elegantly, "Daniel reminds me so much of my ex, Ethan. You remember Ethan, don't you, Patricia?" Patricia's face flushed. Everyone at this table knew Ethan Montgomery, old family friend, trust fund baby, the man Rebecca had dated before me, the man she'd supposedly left behind for something more real. Though, of course, Rebecca's smile sharpened, there are significant differences. Ethan was quite impressive in certain departments. She paused, letting the implication settle. Daniel compensates in other ways. His accounting skills, for instance, are absolutely tremendous. The nervous laughter started. Christopher coughed into his napkin, Amanda's eyes went wide, and James suddenly became very interested in his plate. Nina actually looked sympathetic, which somehow made it worse. I stood there, wine bottle in hand, feeling the weight of their pity and curiosity. This wasn't the first time Rebecca had taken shots at me in public, but it was the most blatant, the most deliberately cruel. She was testing me, I realized, pushing to see if I'd finally push back, or if I'd just smile and take it like I always did. I set down the wine bottle carefully and returned to my seat, my mind already working through calculations, but not the kind she thought I was good at. The main course arrived, beef Wellington that our private chef had prepared to perfection. I watched Rebecca cut into hers with surgical precision, the same way she dissected witnesses on the stand, the same way she'd just tried to dissect me. "This is exquisite," Nina said, clearly trying to move past the awkwardness. "You simply must give me Chef Morrison's contact information." "Of course," Rebecca replied smoothly, though Daniel actually found him, one of his few successful ventures into taking initiative. Another jab. I took a slow sip of wine, letting the Bordeaux roll across my tongue. The vintage was from 2015, a particularly good year. Also, coincidentally, the year Rebecca had still been with Ethan. "Initiative is so important in a relationship," I said quietly, setting down my glass. Everyone's attention shifted toward me. They weren't used to me engaging during these performances. Take wine selection, for instance. Rebecca has excellent taste in wine. She learned it from Ethan, actually. Rebecca's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Just for a second, but I saw it. "Ethan's family owned that vineyard in Napa," I continued, my tone conversational. "They used to vacation there every summer. Beautiful property. Though I understand they had to sell it last year. Financial difficulties." Christopher raised his eyebrows. "The Montgomerys? I heard they lost everything in that real estate collapse." "Not everything," I said. "Ethan still has his condo, the smaller one, in the less desirable part of the Marina district." Rebecca's smile had frozen on her face. She didn't like where this was going, but she couldn't figure out how to stop it without making it obvious. "You seem to know quite a bit about Ethan," Trevor observed, leaning back in his chair with undisguised interest. "Oh, Rebecca keeps me updated," I said easily. "She still has coffee with him occasionally, lunches sometimes. She says it's about staying connected with old friends." I paused, meeting her eyes across the table. "Very important for a lawyer to maintain those connections, isn't it, darling?" The endearment landed like a stone in still water. Nina looked between us, suddenly uncomfortable again. Patricia's expression had sharpened with interest. She loved nothing more than watching other people's marriages implode over dinner. "Daniel," Rebecca started, warning in her voice. "I'm just admiring your loyalty," I interrupted gently. "The way you've stood by Ethan through his troubles. Very admirable. Not everyone would meet their ex for dinner 3 times in the past month while their husband was away on business." The silence that fell over the table was absolute. James cleared his throat. Amanda stared at her plate. Christopher exchanged a loaded glance with Nina. Rebecca's face had gone pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. "How—" "Your calendar syncs to the house system," I said simply. "You made reservations under your maiden name. Cartier on the 3rd, the French Laundry on the 15th, and that little Italian place in North Beach last Thursday. The one where you first told me you loved me, actually. Nice touch." Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her wine glass. The confident, cutting woman who'd humiliated me minutes ago had been replaced by someone struggling to maintain composure. "This is ridiculous," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Those were professional meetings." "Of course," I agreed. "That's why you paid cash each time. Professional discretion." Rebecca stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "This is completely inappropriate dinner conversation." "I agree," I said calmly, remaining seated. "Which is why I was surprised when you chose to discuss our intimate life in front of our friends. I thought we were just sharing, darling. Being open. Honest." Patricia was practically vibrating with excitement. Her earlier sympathy completely evaporated. This was the kind of society drama she lived for. "Perhaps we should go," Nina suggested quietly to Christopher, who shook his head slightly. He wasn't about to miss this. "No, please stay," Rebecca said, trying to regain control. "Daniel is clearly having some kind of episode. The stress of his job." "My job is going very well, actually," I interrupted. "In fact, I got promoted last month. Regional CFO. I didn't mention it because, well, you never seemed that interested in my work." I turned to our guests. "But it did give me access to some interesting financial information. Routine background checks on potential partners and clients." Rebecca's face had gone from pale to ashen. She knew exactly where this was heading now. "Ethan Montgomery applied for a loan through our firm," I continued. "Quite substantial. He's trying to start a new investment company, needs capital. The application was concerning. Outstanding debts, questionable business practices, and interestingly, a guarantor listed on his personal financial statement." I let that hang in the air for a moment. The guarantor was listed as R. Montgomery. At first, I thought it was a mistake, perhaps his mother. But then I noticed the signature date was from 2 weeks ago, and the handwriting was very familiar. Rebecca gripped the back of her chair, her knuckles white. "You're making wild accusations based on your signature on a financial document pledging our marital assets as collateral for your ex-boyfriend's failing business venture," I finished. "That's fraud, Rebecca. You know that. You're a lawyer." The table had gone completely silent. Even Patricia looked shocked now, and that took quite a lot. "The Montgomery name used to mean something in this city," I said quietly. "I understand the appeal of trying to restore it, the romance of it, but you committed fraud using community property. You forged my signature on documents that put our home, our investments, everything we've built together at risk." Rebecca's eyes were glistening now, whether from rage or tears I couldn't tell. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "I have copies of everything," I said. "I also have text messages, quite a lot of them. The cloud backup system you insisted we install for security? It backed up your phone too. Every message, every plan you and Ethan made to rebuild his empire using our money." Amanda gasped audibly. Trevor was staring at Rebecca like he'd never seen her before. "There's something else interesting in those messages," I continued, my voice still eerily calm. "Conversations about me, about how I was just a placeholder. Someone stable and boring while you figured out how to get Ethan back on his feet. How, once his business was running again, you'd, what was the phrase, trade up to the original model." Rebecca's sophisticated facade finally cracked. "Stop it," she whispered. "Just stop." "Why?" I asked, and for the first time I let some of the hurt and anger bleed through. "You had no problem humiliating me about my inadequacies 5 minutes ago. You laughed. They laughed." I gestured at our guests, who now looked like they wanted to be anywhere else. "But I'm not allowed to tell the truth?" "That was just a joke," she said desperately. "You know I didn't mean—" "Which part was the joke?" I cut her off. The part where you compared me to your ex in front of our friends? Or the part where you've been secretly meeting him for months? Or maybe the fraud part, because I'm not laughing, Rebecca. She moved toward me, and I stood, maintaining distance. The intimacy we'd once shared felt like it had happened in another lifetime, to different people. Daniel, please, can we talk about this privately? Why? So you can explain it away? Convince me I'm overreacting? I shook my head. You made this public when you decided to mock me at our dinner table, so let's keep it public. I turned to our guests. I apologize for ruining the evening, but I thought you should know. Some of you are also clients at Rebecca's firm. You should be aware that she has questionable judgment when it comes to ethical boundaries. That's defamation, Rebecca snapped, her lawyer instincts kicking in despite her emotional state. Is it? I pulled out my phone, scrolling to a saved email. This is from the managing partner at your firm. Sent to me 3 days ago after I contacted them with my concerns. They're launching an internal investigation into potential conflicts of interest regarding the Montgomery loan. Apparently, you didn't recuse yourself from the initial consultation, despite your personal relationship with the applicant. Rebecca stumbled backward, sitting heavily in her chair. You contacted my firm? I contacted a lawyer at your firm, I corrected. I wanted to understand my legal options. Turns out, I have quite a few. The fight seemed to drain out of her. She looked small suddenly, diminished in a way I'd never seen before. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated, triumphant, but mostly I just felt sad. We'd had something real once, or at least I thought we had. Late nights talking about our dreams, lazy Sunday mornings in bed, the way she'd looked at me on our wedding day like I was her whole world. When had that become a performance, or had it always been one? I loved you, I said quietly, and the past tense hung heavy between us. I would have done anything for you. You didn't have to scheme or manipulate or humiliate me. If you'd just talked to me. Would you have given Ethan the money? She asked, her voice hollow. No, I admitted, but I would have listened. We could have worked something out, together, like partners are supposed to. She laughed bitterly. You don't understand. Ethan and I, we were supposed to build something. My family and his, the connections, the legacy. It was all planned out since we were teenagers. Then why did you marry me? The question seemed to catch her off guard. She opened her mouth, closed it, then finally said, because he wasn't ready, because his family was falling apart and mine was pressuring me to settle down and you were safe. There it was, the truth, finally. Safe, boring, inadequate, a placeholder. Our guests had begun to quietly gather their things, the dinner party clearly over. Patricia looked like Christmas had come early. This would fuel society gossip for months. Nina touched my arm sympathetically as she passed, whispering, I'm so sorry. Christopher paused at the door. For what it's worth, man, that was the bravest thing I've ever seen at a dinner party. After they left, Rebecca and I stood in the wreckage of our evening, the carefully prepared meal growing cold on the table, the expensive wine turning to vinegar. What happens now? She asked, her voice small. I'd spent the past 3 weeks since discovering everything planning for this moment. The hurt and betrayal had been overwhelming at first, but it had crystallized into something clearer, self-respect. I've already filed for divorce, I said. You'll be served tomorrow. I'm also reporting the fraud to the State Bar Association. Whether they pursue it is up to them, but they need to know. You'll destroy my career, she said, a flash of her old fire returning. You did that yourself. I picked up my jacket from the back of my chair. I'm staying at the Fairmont tonight. My lawyer will be in touch about division of assets. Given the fraud, I expect I'll be entitled to most of them, but we'll see what the court says. Daniel. She reached for me, and I stepped back. Don't. The word came out harsher than I intended. I softened slightly. You made your choice, Rebecca. Multiple choices, actually. Now I'm making mine. I walked toward the door, then paused, turning back. She looked broken, standing there in her designer dress, surrounded by the trappings of success that had apparently never been enough. For what it's worth, I said, you were wrong about one thing. I'm not like Ethan. I'm not impressive because of my family name, or my trust fund, or my physical attributes. I'm impressive because I'm loyal, because I work hard for what I want, because when I commit to something, I mean it. I pulled out one final document from my pocket and set it on the console table by the door. That's a copy of the loan application Ethan submitted. The business plan is actually pretty solid. If he'd come to me honestly, as a friend needing help, I might have considered investing. Not $3 million of fraudulently pledged assets, but something reasonable. Rebecca's eyes widened. You would have helped him? I would have helped you, I corrected, because that's what people who love each other do. They help each other's dreams come true, even when those dreams include other people. I opened the door, then looked back one last time. The real tragedy isn't that you chose Ethan over me, Rebecca. It's that you never trusted me enough to tell me the truth. You assumed I'd be the boring, controlling husband who'd say no. You never gave me the chance to be anything else. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped outside, and I took a deep breath. My phone buzzed. A text from my lawyer confirming everything was in place. Another from my brother offering his guest room if I needed it. A third from Nina, checking if I was okay. I wasn't okay. Not yet. The woman I'd loved, the life I'd built, the future I'd imagined, all of it had been based on a lie. That kind of betrayal doesn't heal overnight. But as I walked toward my car, I felt something unexpected. Relief. The performance was over. The pretending, the walking on eggshells, the constant feeling of not being quite enough, all of it was done. My phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from the head of my division, congratulating me on the promotion I'd mentioned at dinner. It wasn't just talk. I really had been promoted. I'd been waiting to tell Rebecca, planning a quiet celebration, but she'd never asked about my day, my work, my life. I'd spent 5 years trying to be enough for someone who was always looking past me at something else. Someone better, more impressive, more worthy of the life she thought she deserved. Well, now she could have it. Ethan, the legacy, the connections, the whole fantasy, assuming he didn't go bankrupt first and assuming the state bar didn't disbar her for fraud. As for me, I was done being someone's backup plan, done compensating and adapting and making myself smaller to fit into someone else's story. I got in my car and drove toward the Fairmont, the city lights blurring past the window. Somewhere out there was a different life, one where I wasn't just safe or boring or adequate, one where someone would value what I brought to the table, not just tolerate it while waiting for something better to come along. The dinner party had ended in ruins, but maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. Sometimes you have to let the old structure collapse before you can build something new, something real. I smiled, remembering Rebecca's face when her confident smirk had finally vanished, replaced by the dawning realization that she'd underestimated the quiet man she'd married. The boring accountant had turned out to have some moves after all. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and difficult conversations and the painful process of untangling a life we'd built together. But tonight, I was free. Free from the lies, the comparisons, the constant feeling of inadequacy. I checked into my hotel suite, poured myself a whiskey, and looked out over the city I'd called home for 32 years. Somewhere down there, Rebecca was probably calling Ethan, crying about how I'd ruined everything. Let them comfort each other. Let them try to salvage their grand plans from the wreckage of their own making. I raised my glass to my reflection in the window. Here's to being enough, I said quietly, for someone who actually notices. The whiskey burned going down, but it felt good, real, like everything I'd been missing. My phone lit up one more time, another message from Rebecca, begging me to reconsider, to talk, to give her another chance. I turned off my phone and finished my drink. Some conversations were already over, whether she realized it yet or not. The end of a marriage, the end of a performance, the beginning of something true.